What's up, everyone? We got a great podcast ahead of us. We're going to be talking about how to build effective resumes. But before we do, real quick, I got to give a shout out to Phil O'Brien for making my new logo behind me. So big shout out to Phil. Also, Phil and his brother Patrick O'Brien. So Phil and Patrick O'Brien own Anchor East Apparel Company on Long Island. I'm wearing their hat right now. Not only do they own an apparel company, but they also have a larger mission in mind. So they go out to Long Island beaches and they set up events, and they literally take all of the crap that people leave on these beaches, and their goal is to make merchandise from 100% recycled material that they find from these beaches. Not only that, they're going to be donating a percentage of their sales to find a cure, but help spread education around juvenile diabetes. So these are two things these guys are doing on top of selling apparel. It's a great cause. I encourage you guys to check their links out. I'm going to put their Facebook and website link in the description. Check them out. They're a great company. They're great people, and they have a great cause. So let's get to resume building. What's up, everyone? It's September 10th, Friday. Weekend's coming up, feeling good. We've got an interesting and awesome topic here. We're talking about building your resume, building an effective resume, and then distributing that and getting a job. And it's not anymore, couldn't be any more relevant now, where a lot of people are going back to school, but that also means a lot of people have graduated. Now they need to find their first jobs. Plus, the market is hot right now. I don't think anyone has seen it like this. There's a lot of jobs and not enough people to fill them. So the market is very hot right now. So even if you're a veteran, I think it's a good time to dust off your resume and freshen it up. So this is relevant to anyone who is going to be looking for a new job, and extremely relevant to those people who just graduated school, whether that's college or trade school or whatever, high school, and now you're looking for a job. Or you could just be in college or school, and you need to find a job while you're in school to make some money. All relevant. And so we'll be going through principles of writing effective resumes, and then how to actually get a job with that resume. Broader principles where you can also put your personal approach to it, but enough guidelines where I think it helps you be more effective here. So let's talk about it. And before I get into it all, if you, while you're listening to this, if you have any thoughts, feedback, or comments, add that to the comment section. It will be really enlightening to hear what everyone else has to say about this. What things have you learned along the way? Where do you agree or disagree with what I'm saying? All these things I would love to hear, because not only do I need to improve, this is a self-improvement channel. And that means me. I have to improve, not just everyone else. But not only for me, but everyone else who watches this would love to hear different perspectives on how they can build more effective resumes and how they can get a job. So I always say this, but I know there's more that I don't know than I do know. And because of that, I like to take the collective. I like to get other perspectives. I like to hear other perspectives. So I will tell you things that I really believe has helped me, and things that if you put into practice will help you get a job easier, a job that you like. And I'm sure there's things I'm missing. I'm sure there might be a couple things where you say, well, Chris, I agree with a little bit with that, but you can also do X, Y, and Z. Totally love to hear it. Add that to the comment section. Also, if you're new to this channel, please hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell so you can stay up to date with my channel. And this is a self-improvement channel where I'm trying to help people. I My goal is to have a positive influence on 10,000 people. I can only get there if you give me the opportunity, if you give me the chance to share my channel with your friends and family. So I ask you for the opportunity, and I'd appreciate that. So let's get started. All right. So resume writing principles. There are three. One is super important. I think one is probably the most important out of the three. But then we'll talk about three principles for resume writing. One is be results focused. Two is keep it to one page. Three is make it easy to read. Okay, so I think the most important is being results focused. And this is, I think, one of the most common mistakes I see when people write their resumes. What I see is when someone writes their experience, their job experience, I see a lot of people who just take what their job description is. It seems like a copy and paste job. They take their job description, maybe 3 or 5 bullets that they think really highlight what they do, and they add those bullets to their resume. And then it's just like each job they've had, it's just like a job description. And that is what you have done at the job. Those are the tasks and the responsibilities that you have done at the job. That does not stand out at all to anyone. That is almost expected. If I was doing this job, of course, I would need to do the responsibilities of the job. That doesn't stand out to anyone. It just shows that you were able to do the responsibilities of the job. That is not results focused. Results focused is what accomplishments, what results came of the actions that you've done. That's what stands out. You don't want a resume that looks like every other person's resume. It's just if you just have a short job description on your resume, you don't stand out. You look like an average Joe. You look like every other person who's sending their resume out. Those don't stand out. People, remember, recruiters have to look at probably thousands of resumes in any given week or month. If you just show job descriptions and what you've done, what your responsibilities were, you're not going to stand out as an effective person. Recruiters want people who think outside the box. They want to be able to see people who communicate effectively. They want people who solve problems, who set goals and have a vision and accomplish things and push the business forward. You don't get there by just saying, I've done this. I've managed this. I've coordinated with this team. I've facilitated this. All those things are great. I'm glad you did them, but you have to talk about what you've accomplished. And that's a common mistake many people see. I see many people make. And I don't think it's necessarily their fault. I think that we have many people who give bad advice. And I initially was I initially in college, I went to a career center where I thought I was going to go in and get this amazing advice, how to revamp my resume. I got bad advice. I also have seen like career centers within schools. They give like action. Like the big thing that I always took away was they gave action words that you can use to put in your resume. Meaning like coordinated was an action word that they would like to see. Managed, facilitated, performed. Those are like action words that was like the biggest takeaway I had like for some of these resume building tips. And that is horrible advice. Yeah, those are maybe some words you might want to add and sprinkle in. But that is like the first baby step, I guess, into anything, into any kind of writing, is using those action words. But you need to take it a much further step if you want to build an effective resume that stands out to a recruiter, to a hiring manager, to someone who's going to look at your resume and say, okay, this person is going to be great for this job. Not only will they be able to do the job responsibilities, but if we hire this person, they're going to improve our process. They're going to probably drive new business. They're going to save time for us on the QA, a QA process, whatever you do. That's what they're looking for. They're not looking for people who just can do job responsibilities, because a lot of people can do that. What hiring managers, what recruiters are looking for is people who are going to excel. And that's how you stand out. So be results focused. A lot of people have a hard time thinking exactly how they can add this into the resume, especially maybe if you don't have a ton of job experience, or maybe you just don't, you're not thinking about how you can include results into your resume. I talked to my wife about this a couple days ago, and we were just working through her resume a little bit, and I started prodding a little more into about what she's done at her job, because a lot of what I've seen in her resume was responsibilities and job description stuff. And I was like, okay, you've done what else have you done? I just kept asking questions. I got to a point where, I asked a question and she mentioned that she implemented a labeling technique, and from her perspective it was so simple and unsophisticated that she didn't want to add it into her resume. But I kept asking, okay, well, you've done something that's outside of the job description, thinking outside the box, done something outside. What was the result? I said, why did you do this? And the answer was that because people were making mistakes. And I said, oh, okay, that's interesting. How many mistakes? And then we got to a point where it's like around once or twice a month, a mistake would be made because there was no clear labeling. I said, okay, good. So per year, it's about 12 to 24 mistakes a year that are made because there's no labeling process. All right, good to know. How many have been, how many mistakes have been reduced because you now are labeling this thing? We got to a point where it's zero. So about one or two a month, and now there's none. And we stopped there because we didn't have time to go all the way into it. But what I would have liked to do is say, okay, 12 to 24 mistakes you've prevented by putting this new labeling process into place. Cool. Where now can you put a number to that as far as cost saved or time saved? And this is where you can keep following it down, and this is where you can be creative with how you think about the results that you've accomplished, where you can take literally something that my wife thinks is a simple thing where you just put labels on something. You don't want to, in a job interview, she was reluctant to say, I put labels on the work that we're doing because it seemed so unsophisticated and simple. But think downstream. If you think, okay, because I've done this, I've saved about 24 mistakes a year. Okay. What does each mistake mean? Does each mistake mean that 3 teams have to do another 3 hours of work? Let's just say that's the case. So now you have 24 mistakes, and let's say each team has 3 hours. So you've saved 3 hours for every mistake. 3 times 24. I don't know what the hell that number is. It's like 60, 72 or something. But that's just a small example. You'd probably want to blow that out. Like maybe it's more than 3 hours. Maybe it's actually like 5 hours. Or maybe there's a cost involved. Maybe because they've made that mistake, they have to get another round of, I don't know. My wife works in like lab technology in a lab in a hospital. They work with like samples. So if they make a mistake on one batch of samples for DNA, do they now have to get a whole bunch of samples? What does that involve? Do they need to go back to the patient? Do they need to tap into the reserve? So how many hours are affected by this one mistake? And what cost? You have to redo, you have to buy new things to do samples. Do you have to rerun a machine? How much does that machine cost to rerun? You have to start thinking about all these downstream effects of the things that you've done. And then you can get to a point where you can say, maybe it sounds unsophisticated when you're just saying the action of it. Yeah, I implemented a new labeling process, but what did it do? Okay, we saved $20,000 a year because I implemented the labeling process. That seems unsophisticated, but it's a simple labeling process that saved $20,000 a year because we didn't have to rerun the machine 24 times. Or you saved an extra 100 hours on people's time, which meant they can put that extra 100 hours and to work. So you saved them 100 hours. Because of that, those 100 hours were now able to be allocated to more work. So maybe you've produced another 5% increase of work because you saved hours. I don't know. But these are the things you got to be thinking about, is not just actions that you've taken, but not just actions that you've taken, but what are the downstream effects? What were the results? And I'd only tell you this example because it's such a simple example where you can start to show a story of how you've saved time or money, or you've produced more work with any company you're with, or if you own a business or whatever. That is how you can start building out your resume. So an example could be implemented a new or revamped a labeling process that saved the company $20,000 a year. That sounds so much better than just saying, I coordinate with this team and that team. No one cares who the hell you coordinated with. What did you do? What did you accomplish by doing that? So that is the biggest thing that I see. And you need to just think a little more downstream. Like, a lot of people have a tough time thinking about those accomplishments. They just initially think of responsibilities and what you've done at the job. And you might think in your head, well, I didn't accomplish anything. I just did my job and got my day-to-day done. You probably have, there's some way that you've done something outside of your, well, even it could be just your job responsibility, but even if it's out of your job responsibility, there's something probably that you have done that you're not even thinking about. Just like I showed you with that simple labeling example, that you can take a thing that you've done and show the accomplishments, the results for the business. That's what people want to see. They want to see their business move forward. Look, we work with large corporations that have billions of dollars a lot of times. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we work with a small private company. But even, these large companies, I know they're huge and they're massive. Some of like Amazon, give me a break. They've so much money. Apple, Google, but they're a business. The bottom line is to make and drive their business forward. So they want to see people who can do that. They want to see people who can think about how to do X, Y, and Z as an action and how that will affect the business. And those are the things you need to be talking about, accomplishments and results. So think hard about what you're doing and how that can have downstream effects. And an analogy is this. Imagine if you were to introduce a Michael Jordan or a Tom Brady or a LeBron James. There's many more you can think, right? But just a few examples. You wouldn't, like a LeBron James, like think about a resume for LeBron James. It wouldn't be, I dribble the ball, I shoot the ball, I pass the ball, and I run up and down the court. That is the equivalent of job responsibilities, meaning this is what I do. I do this, I do this, I do this. That's great. But does anyone really think that would show the value that LeBron James brings to a team, you of course not. You'd be crazy to think so. The accomplishments of doing those things would be that he's won an X number of championships. He has more points scored than any other person. He has more assists. I don't know if those facts are true. So if someone's a diehard like LeBron basketball fan, I'm sorry, I'm getting this wrong. My point is their resumes would be things they've accomplished, not the actions that they've taken. And that's what would show the value of who those people are. So you need to find your LeBron James accomplishments for yourself. You need to think about how do you make your own LeBron James resume for yourself? What are the things that you've done that help your business or your company or organization by the actions that you've taken? Not just the actions, but what those have led to. And that is what makes a powerful resume, a much more powerful resume than job responsibilities. So if you have I do offer this to some people. If you have any questions or you want me to look over your resume, I would love to do it. Just send me an email. My contact information is in the YouTube channel. And I'll take a look over it and I'll see where I can prod, and we can, think about where we can actually take some of the things that you're doing and turn them into quantifiable results. And I'd love to work with anyone, as long as I have the resume in hand, I can give it a glance over and I can help you guys out with it. So that is the first principle. I think that's the most important principle, to be honest with you. And so you nail that one, and your resume automatically probably 70% better. Results focused. I started reading a lot of sales books because I got interested a lot in sales. I think it helps in almost every aspect of life when it comes to communicating. And I have a whole other podcast on this, but I bring this up because I think that salespeople have the best resumes. They are able to articulate what results and accomplishments they have better than almost everyone else. And so if you ever are interested in what an effective resume could be, I'm actually going to put my resume in the description page for everyone to see as a reference. But look at a salesperson resume, especially an accomplished salesperson. You'll see numbers tied to all the results of the actions they've taken. They've driven an extra $2 million of business, or they've increased 20%. They're very good at that. So look at a salesperson's resume. Salespeople are very good at this. So don't. I know there's maybe a little bit of a stigma on salespeople, but my perspective is salespeople have excellent communication skills. They're able to push deals forward. They write effective resumes, and they're very results driven. So I get from certain movies and certain experiences people have that sales professionals are sleazy. My experience is maybe a couple of those people, but that's in any industry, you're going to find sleazy people. Salespeople are very effective communicators, results driven, and hard freaking workers. So I think a really good example would be to look at a couple of those resumes. If you want something that's really results focused, you'll find a few examples of that. And again, my resume is going to be in the description for a reference. If you want to take a look at that as well, send me yours, and I'd love to take a look at it and help you out there. Next two principles, which are, I think, a little bit common sense here, but let's finish up the resume writing principles. So the first one is keep it to one page. I like to keep my resume to one page. I just know human behavior. I know a recruiter. A recruiter is not going to be looking at 3 pages of a resume. I don't think, especially if they have hundreds to look over. So I like to keep mine to 1 page. I have once seen someone with a lot of years experience, someone who I had a lot of respect for, but their resume was like 6 pages. And I just, even with all the years experience, 20, 30 years experience, I cannot see 5 or 6 pages of a resume being an effective way to show your resume. I think about a resume as a elevator pitch to who you are as a person, what you've accomplished, and to get your foot in the door with another meeting so you can now explain in more detail who you are, what you've done, what you would do in this job, etc. And I'm going to talk about that in a second about when you're actually how to actually get those jobs. But to me, a resume is a little elevator pitch for your life. And you've done a lot of things in your life. If you wanted to, you could write 50 books about all of your experiences. But recruiters don't have time to look at 50 books. I like a simple 1-page resume which highlights my accomplishments, my certifications and skills, and some fun facts about myself. So it's a quick elevator pitch of who I am. A recruiter can get a quick snapshot of who I am as a person, what I've accomplished. And so especially if you're just out of school or a few years working, I would not go over 1 page. If you have maybe 20 to 30 years of work experience, this is maybe a different story. I don't know what the perfect answer is for that person. If you have that much experience, you may already have your own techniques that have worked, and you might not even listen to this channel, and that's fine. I would still, if I had 20, 30 years experience, I would have to think about it. I would maybe 2 pages, but I don't think I'd go over 2 pages, and I'd still would keep it crisp enough where it would be very easy to see. And I would have to think about whether it's even worth doing that. Because I like a quick elevator pitch that someone could see what I'm doing. But again, I understand it. If you have 20 years experience, you worked at 5 companies, and all the 5 companies you've done some things that you want to highlight, I could then see maybe it's a little hard to add all of that on 1 page. And I don't, and then so then maybe it's 2 pages. But for everyone else here who doesn't have 20 years experience and you're just getting out, you're a young adult trying to start your first few jobs, stick to 1 page. It's an elevator pitch. No one's going to have, recruiters are reading hundreds and hundreds of resumes a week. They're not going to have time to read 5 pages of your resume. So that's not the second thing. The third thing is make it easy to read. I would just think like, I have a whole podcast on like communicating effectively, and within that, how you're presenting. And within presenting, you have slides, usually with a PowerPoint slide that usually helps illustrate your point. And I say, make it super simple. Within the first 2 seconds, this person should understand what the slide is. And you do that with a clear title. Any images you have is super understandable. Limit paragraphs and keep it to short sentences. A similar concept with this, where you just want to keep it very simple. You want it almost in 30 seconds or less. They should have a good idea of who you are, what you've accomplished. 2 seconds, the 2-second rule I have for PowerPoint slides, a little different. In here, I would say maybe 30 seconds or less. They should really understand who you are as a person. The quicker, the better. But you want to balance the fact that it's still an elevator pitch. You still want to, right? You want to have enough where you can highlight all the things you've accomplished, but not enough where this is someone's willingness to read your content. You can blow it out, but then no one's going to read it. Or you can make it concise enough where someone can read it, and someone can read your accomplishments, and it's only going to take 30 seconds to read. You need to find that balance. Crisp and clear sentences. Don't make them overly long. Make your format so clean and understandable that no one can be confused about, if you've had 2 or 3 jobs. in the same company, if you've been promoted, make that super clear. Someone should not be confused at all. There should be zero confusion. There should be no need to have to clarify or have to relook over something in your resume. It should just be like, okay, scan it quickly within 30 seconds, and I understand this person's background. And so that just might mean, some people like to put things on the left and right hand column, and sometimes that could work. I don't do that, but I think that could potentially work, as long as someone, when they're looking at it, isn't getting confused and isn't looking at too much information. So those are the things. Again, I think the most important thing, because easy to read and one page, I would say, to a certain extent, could be a little more preferences. My way of keeping something simple on a resume, formatting wise, could be different than how you do that. But I don't think anyone can argue the fact that you need to be results focused. So that's why I think that's the most important thing. So those are my 3 principles I talk about writing when you're writing a resume. Now, finding a job after you've written this resume. So I told you that I was going to give an analogy with something that I do at work. And so, sorry, 1 second. So now you have an effective resume, clear, concise, results focused. Anyone who looks at it would say, okay, this is a good resume. You stand out. Now you got to get it in front of people. And so I would say there are 2 main ways you go about this that need to be done concurrently. And so it's similar to what I do in my job. I am an advertising professional. And so my job is to connect people with businesses by forms of advertising. So drive business for an advertiser by finding people who are either in market or would be willing to buy their products. So I'm basically a connector by using forms of advertising. Connect people to businesses. And there's a lot of ways to do this, but there's two concepts that I want to get across. One is retargeting and the other is prospecting. Those are different targeting strategies. So when I say targeting, there are 2 types of people who would be interested in a business, and one falls under someone who would fall under a retargeting message. One would be prospecting, and I'll tell you what that means. If, for example, I have a book, The Hidden Doors to Success, it's on Amazon. There would be 2 types of people who I could message, and you should delineate this because you would have different strategies for going after these 2 types of people. One is people who've already been on my site, have already searched for the book, have already contacted me, whatever. They've either visited an in-store or online, and they've seen the product. They've looked at the store, and maybe they've added it to the cart, but they never finished the checkout. Those are people who you would want to retarget because they've shown a high interest in your product. And the whole thing is that there's not that many of those people. How many people, even with my book, right? There's not that many people, but think about a larger business. There's always a small number of people who are actively right now looking to buy your product, visiting your store, going online and trying to buy your product online, and then don't end up finishing the process. So to you, it says, okay, this person is super interested. We should probably focus a lot of attention on these core people because we know they have a very high likelihood of buying our product. Okay, then there are people who maybe are let's use my book still for an example. Maybe people are book fans. They like to read books. They're bookworms, especially self-development bookworms, but they've never heard of your book. They've never heard of you. They don't know who you are. That would be a prospecting tactic. You'd be targeting people who maybe or somewhat could be interested in books, but they've never visited your site. Their likelihood of buying your product is much, much lower compared to someone who has already visited your site. And because of that, there's a lot of people in that. There's a lot of people who might be interested in books, but it's a broad audience. And then their conversion rate, their likelihood to buy your product is super, super low. So think about that. There's two buckets: a retargeting audience that is very high likelihood to buy your product, but it's a small audience. There's only so much you can do here. Small audience. You're not gonna, you're not gonna blow your business out with these small group of people, but you need to capitalize on them because they have a high likelihood of converting. Then you have a broader audience who might just be generally interested in the vertical, but have a very low likelihood of converting. And so I say this because I find this analogy good for what I'm trying to explain when it comes to getting your resume out. So there's those two things. Let's talk about it. First, for retargeting, the analogy here is that you would want to find a small group of companies that you really want to work for and you want to put a lot of time and energy towards. And then for prospecting, my analogy is then you have everything else that you're probably going to put a less time and energy into it, but you might just be blasting your resume and cover letter out there, knowing there's going to be a low likelihood of converting, but there's still a chance. And so you still want to capitalize on both types of companies. And so what I would do for a strategy once you have your resume and you build out a cover letter and you're ready to start sending this out to companies is a couple things. Find a small number of companies that you want to work for. Could be maybe top five companies that you really want to put your energy towards. Maybe top 3 or top 5, that maybe less. Companies that you really want to put all your energy towards. You can see yourself working for, and that's your goal, is to work for these companies, one of these companies. That is like your retargeting, right? If you now want to put a lot of energy into this, you can increase your likelihood to work at that company. Whereas if you just blasted out your resume and cover letter, you're going to be a little less tailored. You're going to have a lot less energy and time to try to get a job there. Your likelihood is probably a little less. So you want to focus on the companies you really want to work for. And what you would do is, there's many things you could do. There's LinkedIn, or let's just say it's networking. You have to network. That might mean digitally on LinkedIn. I like to find people who would work at the company, who do work at the company, whether they're a hiring manager or not, and just try to connect with them. And then once I connect with them, try to build a rapport and ask if they can pass my resume on to the hiring manager. That's one example of like networking that you can sort of skip the line. As you know, you can either just like post you can either reply to the job posting, which you can assume hundreds of people are doing. You're not going to stand out. Or you can try to work around it, get someone who knows the hiring manager, and ask them to put you on your resume at the top of the list. The game, when you're going to hear all this, the game comes down to statistics and networking, and that's how you can get better jobs. On top of, you have to obviously, you can do all that, but if your accomplishments and you don't know how to like show your accomplishments, obviously that is not going to get you a job either. But assuming you're top notch, you're ambitious, you are results focused, you have goals and you have a vision, and you have all that, the game is statistics and the game is networking. So right now we're talking about a small group of companies that we want to work for, and you got to network. So LinkedIn, I give you an example. Reach out to friends or family that might know someone who works at the company, and you can build a rapport with someone who works there who can put your name on the top of the list. That's one angle that you could do. Next angle is the way you talk to these people are going to be a little different than, at least initially, the way you reach out to them initially is going to be a little different than how you would reach out to someone who I'm saying in the next example would be the prospecting approach. So in this example, you want to be super, super customized to the company. You want your cover letter and you want project examples that you've done that is similar and relevant to the company. These are the small group that you want to put all of your time and energy towards, and that means your cover letter. Not only, I'm going to speak to cover letters in the other example where you can do a basic customization. Maybe just each industry might have a slight different resume, but for these companies, you need to be super, super customized into the job and the company, and because the more tailored it is to the company, the higher likelihood you're going to have to convert. But you can't do that for hundreds of companies. There's no possible, or thousands. Let's say you're trying to get a job and you're shooting your resume out to a lot of different people. You can't make a super customized resume for thousands and people. I think that'll just probably burn yourself out a little bit. I think if you're doing that, it needs to be industry tailored. So maybe there's 6 different industries that you think you can customize that out, and then don't really customize it anymore and just sort of blast it. But you don't do that with the small group of companies that you really want to work for. Your whole messaging has to be super tailored. So your cover letter has to be spot on to everything you're thinking about. I would show examples of what you have done in the past that makes it super relevant for the current role in the current company. And then third, which is I think really freaking important, is I do this with every interview I'm on. I say this, but what goals and what vision would you put forward if you were in that job? And you get a little more tailored. So you say, look, if I was in this position, my goals would be X, Y, and Z, and here's what I would focus on, and this is the vision I'd push forward. It just helps. No, not many people do that, so it helps to show what you would be actually doing, what your thinking would be. People like to see strategic thinking. And you should do that in an interview, but at least before, you should, like, maybe it's in the cover letter. Maybe you want to put in the cover letter, or maybe it's the person that you're building the rapport with, to maybe on LinkedIn, or the friend or relative who connects you to the recruiter or hiring manager, and you just want to keep making your message customized to what you would do at that company, how it's relevant. And so maybe there's 3 or 5 companies you can do that to, but you can't put all that energy into hundreds of companies. So I would do 2 different strategies. One is focus on a core number of companies where you can just do all the things I said. Second, and that's the retargeting piece I was mentioning. Second is focus on a broader range of companies that you don't focus all of your time and energy on, but you have a slightly different approach. And the approach is it's a broader message, but you're doing so in a customized way. Where, let's say you want to send it out to, you want to send your resume cover letter out to like 50 companies a day or something. I don't know. I always found when I was in college, so a little bit of it is a numbers game, and then also you have to do those small companies and network. But you have to play both fields, because you don't know, maybe those 3 companies it's very hard to get a job at, and so you have to keep following up with those companies and keep putting your energy, but then you have to have a broader approach, is what I think. And so this is when I say this, the prospecting. Broader company, much more companies, maybe it's like 20 to 50 a day, and you're sending your resume out and cover letter to them, and there's a lower likelihood of getting maybe a meeting or an interview, but you're sending so many out that the chances doesn't matter, that the conversion rate is so low. You're still going to get a decent amount of interviews, and then from there you can actually maybe see if those companies would be interesting. They might not be in your top 5, but maybe you change your mind and one actually really piques your interest. So, but you're never going to have the time to put all that energy into hundreds of companies a week. So I like to do a broader message. So what I would do is tailor the the cover letter, tailor the cover letter to industries. So maybe there's like 7 different types of companies that all could use the same cover letter. You would change out the company name and the name of the role. Okay, but everything else in there wouldn't have to change. So then it's just a matter of scaling it out, replying to job postings with your same resume and then a industry tailored cover letter. And then you can just keep popping that out and sending it out. And then other portion of your time is focused on keep pushing, keep following up, keep trying to get networks and keep trying to network with your top 5 companies. And I think that is a foolproof strategy to getting a job within about 3 months or less. I wouldn't pick any job that comes your way. Try to find one that you really think will be valuable for you. But this is my approach when it comes to building an effective resume, and 2, messaging this to recruiters, people who post jobs, hiring managers, and everyone else who you need to get in touch with for any particular job. So that's my recommendation. I'd love to hear comments. I'd love to hear comments, feedback on what things have worked well for you. I'd love to hear anything that you may agree or disagree with, what you like, what you don't like. This is a self-development channel. I can only be as good as the people around me, and I can only learn so much. So I need to hear other people's perspectives, and I value them very highly because I know that I always say this, there's only so much I can know. I know there's more that I don't know than I do know. And that's why I always love to hear perspective. So please leave some comments. And we'll end off here. So that is resume building and getting a job. I think it's going to be extremely helpful for anyone right now who's looking for a job. The job market is hot. A lot of people have just graduated schools and you're looking for a new position. Use these principles to get a job quicker and to get a better job. And if you like what you heard, please subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell so you can stay up to date with my channel. Give me the opportunity to share this channel with your friends and family. The only way that I can have a positive influence on many people, my goal is 10,000 right now, is if you give me the opportunity to share this channel with your network. And I hope that the content that I'm distributing is only helpful to people. And that's all I'm trying to do here. So thank you in advance for doing that. And stay tuned because we got more content coming. We got better equipment. We have, what do we got? We got a new camera. So if you were ever looking at previous videos, this camera should be a little better now. We've got a ring light. We have a ring light now. You know you're doing well and you got a ring light. That's a joke, by the way, because the ring light's like $25. So we got a ring light. We're getting new equipment and we're going to be posting once a week. We're not stopping. We're doing this thing full force self-development. We're going to be we have already a bunch of bookings for interesting people over the coming weeks. We'll be talking about self-development books and topics, everything in between. And so I'm excited because we got a lot of more stuff coming. This is just the beginning. Stay tuned. Thanks for listening. Have a good rest of your day.